Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Less Than Yesterday show. I am Joe Braymeyer, and it's an extra special day today. I've got Mike Norton here joining me in the shop. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning, Joe.
Before we dive into the eggs and bacon here, I figured I got to give a couple plugs. Make sure that you are checking out Joe Braymeyer on YouTube. Give us a subscription thumbs up over on that channel. So we can start going live over there. This interview will be posted on the Joe Braymeyer YouTube channel later on, so that way it'll be much easier to share it with people that don't happen to be on Facebook. The show is powered by your friends over here at Treadmill Heroes, new and used fitness equipment, commercial and residential, and yes, we have infrared saunas, and I used mine a couple times this weekend, Mike, and that was a nice little cupcake to eat throughout the weekend. I'm sure there's more plugs, but we'll get to those later. Good morning, Mike. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome. Morning, Joe.
If a stranger to Wilton came up to me and opened up the Citizen book and pointed at the name Mike Norton and said, "Who's this guy?" I would say that Mike is a genuinely humble guy. He's loved in and outside the softball community within Wilton. I would say the guy is always the first one to raise his hand to volunteer and help whenever there's something going on. I would say I've seen him speak at a couple funerals, and I would say that he's just an all-around great guy. And I would tell the quick story of the first time you and I ever met was in this building.
Yes, it was.
When it used to be branded Brisker's Total Fitness, when a young Joe Braymeyer would ride his bike down here to try to figure out how to start lifting weights. And in the large group of giant meatheads that were in here, Mike Norton was always in here banging iron with them. And he was always the first person to say hi. And he was always the first person to offer any advice or a hand or a spot if I needed it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So here we go. Mike, when was the last time you said the F word?
I don't know for sure.
Probably a long time ago.
I'm not saying I've never said it, but it's probably been a long time.
You don't strike me as someone who throws something across the room and yells profanities.
I have thrown things before, but
yeah.
As I mature, Joe, I kind of step back and understand that that's not the right way to go about business. So,
does Mike get mad?
Yeah, I have a little streak there when I get frustrated.
What gets you frustrated?
Doing things a second time. You know, when you think you've got everything going the right direction and then you got to back up and start over. Sometimes that's frustrating. But as I say, as you mature, you understand that's part of what goes on, whether you're doing construction or whatever. It happens.
You don't strike me as someone who gets in a hurry very much.
I try to be efficient, but not at the place where it costs you quality. So,
what stresses you out?
I don't know. I take pride in the fact that I can deal with stress. You know, everybody's got family things going on. Everybody's got issues that come up from time to time where things may not be just quite right. But I think stress is all how you handle it. And I think that's the rough part of today. I see so many kids get stressed so easily without trying to figure out how to cope, without trying to work through it, and just kind of throw up their hands and say, I can't do it. And I think we were taught that work through your situation, work through your problems, and, you know, it'll come out. It'll be all right.
It's interesting. We live right now in such an age of instant gratification.
Correct.
Like anymore, and to the most part too, whether you have a lot of money, whether you're poor, wherever you land on an economic scale, we live in a world of instant gratification. As long as you have a phone, you can put yourself on the drip somewhat.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I speak for my generation. I think we were one of the last ones that had to experience life without instant gratification. Being in my early 40s now, certainly you had to grow up without instant gratification. If you wanted something, you had to work for it, whatever
right.
It was.
Right.
And the younger kids today, or just anybody that's probably even in their 30s, have had instant gratification.
Yeah.
How would you advise someone to navigate through that these days?
Well, right now it's interesting because I have a granddaughter. It's 22, and she just lost her job and needs to move to a different apartment. So over the holidays, I sat down with Maddie and I said, let's look at what's real here. Right now, you're only taking care of you, and she has another girl that shares the apartment with her. I said, so what's important right now? We just have to take care of what you need. And I said, that should be your goal right now. Don't get frustrated and distracted by everything else. Just take care of your needs right now, and then let it grow from there. She may have to take a job that she doesn't like. She may have to do something that she isn't really fond of for a while, but she'll understand that it's all part of life and navigating the channels where you have to go with that. So that's kind of, I try to, especially with the grandkids, I try to have them work through their problems rather than just say I can't do it, or like you say, it didn't happen right away, and I'm that instant gratification is really, it's a true thing.
Yeah,
they're just used to that, and sometimes you got to work through.
Us as people, there's a lot to be said about going home at night or putting your head on the pillow feeling like you actually accomplished something or worked through a problem, even if it was a problem, a big problem that you're working through or you worked through, and even if you're back to zero, there's a huge sense of accomplishment there.
Yes, there is.
And I think a lot of people just don't work through it, so they'll just ignore it or whatever it is, and that can turn into a heavy rucksack in a hurry, I think, on your back.
Yeah. See, and the other thing, Joe, you have, and when you get into my point in my life, what's my purpose? I'm retired. Am I going to sit and watch Gunsmoke all day, or am I going to do something constructive, or can I be of value to somebody? I think, each individual has to see what fits for them. But for me, I like, getting back to what you said about accomplishment, I like to have something at the end of the day where I helped somebody or we did something that was, value added. So
I think your generation, that's why you see a lot of guys that still just get up every day and work, whether it's go to work or get up and work.
Right.
Because you may be retired, which I'd love to dive into, but you never really retired. You didn't stop working. You just stopped going to that place or doing that thing.
Exactly.
You're still working every day. And even if it's laying a floor or mowing a yard, you go home and, you got to feel like, you know what? I went and I got some things done today.
Yeah, we had a good day. Yeah.
And I think there's more younger people, let's say 25 and under, who maybe don't get that. They don't get that high, and that's a high you can't replicate. You just got to do it.
Right, and it's an acquired thing. And, well, like I mentioned, all 5 of my grandkids have worked with me at one time or another. And that's what I try to teach them. That, at my point in my life, I'm just happy that I can still work. If I was to the point where I didn't have the ability to get out and do things, that would drive me nuts. I'm blessed that I can still do things. Going to do it as long as I can, and I try to pass that on to the next generation. That there's some value in that, and that you're a better person for that. So.
Let's dive in here. Tell me about Mike's family. Tell me about Mike Norton's family. Take me back to before you started your family, and how you got her going.
Okay, Susan and I are high school sweethearts. We started dating when she was a sophomore. I was a junior. We've been married for 51 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have...
Congratulations.
We got married young, but obviously it worked, I guess. So, 51 years. But I have 2 children. Eric's 50. Jennifer's 47. Eric works in the Quad Cities. Lives up on McClellan Boulevard up in the Davenport area.
Okay.
Jennifer lives here in town. She's the media specialist at the school for the elementary.
What does that do? What is the media specialist?
So to me, when you and I grew up, there were librarians in the school.
Okay.
And now it's more media. Of course, it's incorporated some of the computers and that type stuff. So Jennifer, it's interesting because Susan's mom was a librarian for years in Wilton. And so it's interesting to see how things follow from tradition. And it's kind of going through the family yet. Jennifer loves to read. I remember when she was younger, we'd catch her in her bedroom, late at night, underneath the covers, reading with a flashlight. That was kind of stuff that went on. But
parents would pay big money for that these days.
Yeah.
They would pay big money to catch their kids under a blanket with a flashlight reading a book.
So that's been kind of natural for her, and it's a job that I think she'll do really well at, and I think she enjoys it. So then we have 5 grandkids. Eric has 3 children. 2 of them are in Kansas City. One of them's going to school out in Erie, Pennsylvania. Jennifer's youngest is a senior in Wilton this year, and John is 20, and he still lives at home, but he works, and so I'm happy for that. He's out working. He's not just sitting at home and playing the computer games. He's doing stuff. So buying his first car on his own, and we're proud of all the grandkids. So each has their own trait and their own distinction, but you see good things in each of them. So.
Do you and Susan ever make the rounds? You get down to Kansas City at all, or just kind of get them up here when everybody's up and around? I'm sure you strike me as someone who gets the family together from time to time.
Last fall, yeah, we do. We try to as often, and it's more difficult, of course, because they're spread out. And with the school schedule and everybody's work schedule, it gets a little bit harder. But we were together the week after Christmas, and that'd probably be the last time we see Jack till, who knows, maybe May. But last fall, we went down to Kansas City for a few days and saw Maddie, helped her do some things in the apartment. Then in October, we went out to Erie, Pennsylvania, and Joe, we just hit it perfect. For 9 hours, we had the greatest tree display riding along the lake, and the trees were all turning fall colors. You couldn't have planned a better trip. But we enjoyed that. Went out and saw Jack. And little known facts, Erie, Pennsylvania is the 3rd snowiest city in the U.S., and Jack's already –
Really?
Yeah. It's because of the lake effect. And so Jack came home for Thanksgiving. He went back out, and they had 30 inches of snow. He found out that towing his car is $250 to get it out of a snowbank. So he's learning quickly about the different climate.
Wow. That's incredible. I didn't know that little piece of trivia.
Yeah. So
you mentioned retired. Now, this is the part of the show that I love because I've known you since I was a kid.
Right.
But I don't know that much about you. And I think goes with the whole community, right? We all know each other, but we really don't know each other. I don't even know what you did for a career. What was your job?
So when I got out of school, Joe, and didn't foresee myself as a student, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So it was funny. I worked for my dad a little bit when I was in high school. They had a tractor cab manufacturing plant down the south end of Wilton. And that place closed, and one day we were downtown, and a guy came up to me and he says, they're hiring down in Muscatine. I said, that's cool. We'll go down and see that and apply for that. So at the age of 20, I went down to a place called Prime Mover, 1974. The wage was $3.30 an hour, and I thought I was doing great. That I don't know if I was never smart enough to leave, but it just kind of gradually grew into a job that took care of my family, provided a good living for us, and I never left. So for 45 years, I was in manufacturing. And I did everything from, I started out on an assembly line and ended up with a weld crew at one time, had a machine shop at one time, and my last 3 years of my career, I got to do the operations part, where it just kind of over the whole shop, which was interesting because you had to try to make all the pieces fit. And
what did you make?
We made electric material handling equipment. So
you're gonna have to dumb that down for me.
Okay, so the little truck you see in Aldi's with the mast on it, that's something we make. The electric pallet trucks that you see running around grocery stores.
Oh yeah.
Originally, when I was with Prime Mover, we made the stand-up fork trucks and all that. But then as we advanced, we decided that wasn't our market niche. So we went down to just basically the walkies, the one you walk behind, instead of the rider trucks. And So in the course of years, I saw a lot of changes and a lot of manufacturing techniques. Eventually, we were bought out. We were bought by Raymond, and then Raymond was bought by Toyota. So the interesting part of the factory was when the Toyota, they would send Japanese over to talk about processes and stuff. Pretty interesting. And they would go through how important each specific process was, repeatability, and the functions and all that. And so I learned a lot. It was interesting. So.
And how long were you there?
45 years.
Got the gold watch and the cake party and everything.
Silver watch, gold watch, yeah, and the banquet in the end. So, but like I say, it provided a good living for us and never saw a need to go anywhere else. It worked.
How long have you been, quote, retired?
5 years. So almost 6, 2019.
You're one of those people, Mike, that don't age to me.
Trust me, I do.
You probably feel like you age, but from the outside looking in, like I don't feel like from the first time I met you till now, like you've aged a bunch. And that has been 35 plus years that I've known who you are.
Right.
So what do you attribute that to? Because you don't seem like an old retired grandpa.
Well, your dad and I have a theory on this, that you got to keep moving when you can. And we've had this discussion, you have to have a purpose every day. Get up, and I think that's part of it. You stay active, it does help with that. And so that's kind of my thought. This time of year is really tough for me because there's not as much going on, and I can't do as much. So some days it drives me nuts where I got to find something to do. But so that's part of it. I think, try to stay healthy, my wife does an excellent job of preparing the right meals for me. She's done wonders with that. She's very conscientious about what we have and for meals and stuff, and does a good job. So
51 years, you said?
Correct.
So anybody who's been married for 51 years is obviously in love, but also recognizes that marriage is not easy. You have to work at it. So you guys have made it 51 years, and Susan is still making meals for you, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, I think so.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, you kind of summed it up. You have to work at it. There's give and take in any relationship. And you also find out you got to give each other a little space now and then. Some days, if I'm having an off day, we go out to the shop and just work out there or whatever. But through the years, it's been pretty good. I'm not saying there wasn't ever an argument or that you didn't have a discussion where you didn't quite agree with each other. But you work through it for the common good. You know that marriage is important to us, obviously. Family is important to us, so you work through it. What's the best decision for all that? So
there's a lot less people getting married these days.
True.
There's a lot less people having kids these days. What are your thoughts on that? Do you ever think about that? Well,
I hear kids say, well, I don't want to bring a kid into this world. And there again, I think it's what you make it. There's a lot of drama, Joe, anymore. And I know you kind of kidded about I don't have a Facebook page, but I think sometimes social media gets a little out of control. And I think some people read more into it than what needs to be. I think if you bring up a child and nurture a child in a good way, that there's still a lot of good people in this world. You've interviewed some of these kids in high school. You've seen a lot of good kids already.
I have.
Yeah. And, I like to see that. I mean, we can go back to when Casey was in school and the things, the activities she was in and that type thing. Just watching the kids and their different activities and how they mature and how they grow and what they contribute later on. It's fun to watch that. And I think for people to say, I don't want to bring a child in this world, that's the wrong approach, I think. That's just me personally.
Having the high school seniors up here, a couple of them at a time, has been a big eye-opener for me, and it's been very rewarding because when you're not part of that group of people anymore, and if you don't work in the school system or if you're not, coaching, you can very easily create this perception in your head that young kids are a bunch of turds these days and they don't want to do anything and they're just mindless zombies and so on and so forth. But after sitting down with some of these kids and talking to them, I'm like, man, from what I've seen so far, Wilton's got a great crop of young kids coming. And you know what? I don't think it's exclusive to Wilton. I think that we're just letting a few things out in the ether affect our whole opinion of the whole pie.
Right.
And it's been great. And that's why I want to continue to have these younger kids come in and talk to them, because it's like, man, these people seem motivated to me. They seem like they're good kids to me. They seem like they're trying to make the best decisions they can and navigate the world as they see it. And so it's been a good eye opener for me.
Yeah, I think it's fun. The group of kids you're talking about, of course, my granddaughter, as I mentioned, was a senior this year.
Oh, she's coming in. She's been mentioned a couple times.
So I've seen her group of friends, and I've watched them through their course, their band activities, just growing up. It's been fun, whether it be on the softball field or, whatever. It's just fun to watch the kids and what they become as young adults. And it's, and I think that's what's important, trying to form our kids the right direction. And I think that's our responsibility. Try to teach them the value of work, teach them how important it is to look out for others. One of my big pet peeves is people that are oblivious to others. It just drives me nuts. I think when you show that you care for somebody else, take the importance of self-importance off of you and worry about somebody else. The world becomes a better place. So, just a thought.
Well, and that kind of sums you up, I think, in a nutshell. You have a servant attitude. You just do.
I think that's what we're called to do. For me, that's part of my, my faith base and part of who I grew up as. That's the way my parents were. So.
One of the number one reasons why I was excited to have you in here is because I kind of wanted to have the God talk with the guest. And I just felt like you were a good first person to do that because you're a man of faith.
Yes.
And, as a young man myself, I'm navigating through that much more so once you have kids. I think something happens when you have kids where you're like, wow, if you don't wake up to you're just little old Joe, and without God, you got nothing. And it's been a fun journey that I've been on. But would you mind sharing a little bit with me on your relationship with God? And
no, I grew up in the church, so for us it was pretty natural. On Sunday morning, you knew where you were going. I can't remember, very rarely did you not go to church. That was just part of who you were. And my faith is important to me. And when Susan and I got married, it was always in the church. The kids went to Sunday school. That was just part of what we did. And I still continue. The church is still important in my life. Getting back to what you said, the servant's attitude. Jesus came on this earth to serve, and he proved that for us. And whether you're Christian-based or not, this world's a better place when you have a moral compass. And you can take the basic 10 commandments that have been around since Moses. If you follow those, we're in a pretty good place. And is it a perfect world? No. Do we make mistakes? Yeah. But you have to be grounded in something. And to me, my faith is important. We talked about stress. What stresses you? If you've got your faith to fall back on, that's something that gives you the hope and stuff that you can work through that. So that's why it's important to me. I think there are too many people that don't have anything to fall back on, don't know what to grasp for, don't know what to believe in. And so that's kind of it.
Yeah. I think that's great. I have realized in my young old age that no matter what, Jesus is just hanging out right here. Yeah. He's hanging out right here with us. He's always with you.
He's ready to be called on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's getting too religious here. I feel like in this day and age, like people are looking for a buddy system. Everybody needs a buddy.
Right.
You know, and I think so many people feel alone. And even if you have a lot of people around you, sometimes you can just feel like you're just alone. But, you know, you got a buddy who's known you your whole life that you can talk to. There's no secrets there.
Right.
And so I think that's, I don't know. And I don't know, but I just sense that there is a little bit more of a religious uptick, a little bit more of a spiritual uptick with some of the younger people out there today. I mean, I see it online and maybe it's just my algorithm, but I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing and hearing out there.
Right. You've seen where some of the universities where they have these big revivals and the kids are coming forward. And that's pretty impressive. And that the young people would start realizing that there's something important in their life. And so to me, getting back to what you said, to have that person in your life or to have that quality to be able to call on Jesus when you need to, that's important. Like I said, being a follower doesn't mean you won't have problems. It just means you have a way of working through them. So you ask for that help. Our prayers aren't always answered the way we want, but we do see a lot of power in prayer too.
Well, and you can take comfort knowing that they're heard.
Yes, exactly.
So that there may not be an immediate Frisbee being tossed right back at you, but it's coming.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always in our time. You know, God's time's different than ours. So getting back to instant gratification, we want our prayers answered now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen that way. And then down the road a ways, 15, 20 years, you say, you know what, it was answered, just a different direction. So
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah. And I feel like you and I could talk about that for a long time. But there's a lot of chapters in the Mike Norton book I got to get to, and one of the ones that I know people are dying for me to get to, and I am too, is softball. I don't think you can say Mike Norton without thinking softball right away. Like if you ever play the game Taboo, where you got to have somebody guess the name, right? If the word was Mike Norton, one of the words that you would not be able to say because it would be a dead giveaway would be softball, right? Yeah. So how did that all come to be? And for anyone who is maybe watching that doesn't know, like Mike Norton and softball go hand in hand. How and why?
So when I was a senior in high school, my uncle asked me to help coach a Little League team, obviously boys Little League. I found out that it was something I enjoyed, and actually we put together some pretty good teams. We had a lot of fun. I just saw Brent Goodrum the other day at Brian's service the other day. And
Brian Goodrum passed away, which was a huge bummer.
Yes, it was.
Right? If we could just take a time out real quick. What a funny guy.
Funny and yet a community guy.
Yes. Yeah. He was so sharp, like back in his, I don't know really when our prime was. For me, in my memory, Brian was in his prime during the play when the community would get together and do the Fine Arts Guild play.
Yeah, he fit the roles perfectly.
And if you gave him a comedic role, he would hit a grand slam. Yep. He was so artistic with his facial features and his inflection and how he would play the character. He was so good. You would sell tickets to the Fine Arts play knowing Brian Goodrum was in it.
You're right. Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, I saw Brent and Joe, and that reminded me back to our Little League days. You know, we'd had some good times. And so I coached Little League for several years. Well, then when my daughter became of age to play softball, my wife said, well, you coach Little League for Eric, or for the boys, maybe you ought to try softball. So Jennifer was probably 9, 10 years old at the time. She's, 47 now, so that's been a few years. And so we started softball, and softball is such a fast game and a fun game that I just kind of went with it. And when Jennifer got out of school, I continued on helping Larry Beebe. And I had a few years where I didn't do a whole lot, but worked with the pitchers or did something like that. And then DJ Smith had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to coach with him. So I coached with DJ for 6 years, and I coached with Lance Peterson for 6 years. So it was a fun time. I think altogether I coached like 42 years, and most of it was softball.
Wow.
And the thing is, you can learn something from every coach you coach with, Joe, if you're open to it. You just see something, why didn't I think of that, or why didn't I pick up on that? And so it's a lot of fun. And the thing is, you're teaching more than softball. You're teaching life, and it's just another classroom. It's not history, it's not math, but it's another classroom. How do you get together? How do you depend on each other? How do you work together? And take your strengths and weaknesses and see what you can come up with. And that's the real part of it. It's fun. So,
do you have any memories that stick out from those 40-some years of coaching?
Oh yeah, we had. I can go clear back. Jennifer had a girl the same age as her named Susie Borman. The pastor at the Lutheran Church for a while had a daughter that played the same time she did, and she was such a character. I'll never forget. We were in a tournament in Cedar Rapids, and Susie and the girls, they went swimming. The whole team went swimming. And somehow Susie got in there near a radiator or something and got a burn on her back. Susie was, like I say, she was a character, so she went up and told the people at the desk, "You're going to hear from my lawyers, Mormon and Mormon." Funny stuff like that. I mean, just little things like that stick out. Of course, we had a team that went to state in 2009 with Rachel Brisker and that bunch, and Rachel and I have been pretty close. I performed her wedding, and it was a good time. So that's the other thing. You coach for these years, and then later on it kind of comes back, and there's other parts that come from it. So it's fun.
Is that a huge honor? I mean, obviously the answer is yes, but tell me a little bit about it. You coached a girl through softball, and then later on she's like, "Mike, I want you to get me married."
That was a huge honor, Joe, and I had never done a service at that time. And I said, "Rachel, you know what you're asking?" I said, I don't want a marriage to be cheapened up by, some old coach just doing your service. No, it was what she wanted, and we did the service, and I think it meant a lot to both of us. I think so. It went off pretty well. She didn't get the best of days to do it, but the service went well, and she has 2 kids, still married, so. That's good. So,
and as of right now, you're retired from softball? You're done? Pretty
much. Leela was my granddaughter. She'd played some softball, and when she's done, I'm pretty well done.
So she's done now? She's going to play this year?
I don't know that she is.
Okay.
I think she's looking at her options this summer.
Yeah.
She's going to go to Iowa next year. She's thinking more. I think she might be on Grandpa's mowing crew more than softball this year. I think she's ready to make some money and put it towards school.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. When it's the summer of your senior year, you got to get your affairs in order. You got like things that are happening. And if you look at a sport and you're like, I enjoy this, but no matter what, I'm done. So I can either wrap this up or I can get a head start on the next chapter. It's a tough decision to make.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where she's at right now, trying to decide what's going to be best for her for next fall.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you don't love this thing over here. It's like, I got to get ready for this big next thing over here.
Right. She takes her she takes her schooling seriously. I mean, she's worked really hard, and all our kids have. I mean, they've done well in school, but she's the last, so I guess that's why we're kind of talking about her on that. But so... Yeah, so I have one going to school out in Pennsylvania, one going to school in Kansas City, and then one over here at Iowa. Grandma thinks it's neat that she's going over here to Iowa because she can buy groceries for her. So,
wow, it's incredible, man. What are you most proud of? Now, let me give you some context to that, because you're a super humble guy, so you're going to try and stop yourself because you don't want it to come off as you're bragging about anything. But if Mike just sits back and is talking to Mike and says, "You know what? This thing that you did was really cool, and I'm proud of you for doing that. What is one of those things?
Well, Joe, I guess what I look at, getting back to, I never went to college. Had a pretty good career when I got done. Pretty good career. But family's probably the most thing I'm proud of. All the kids are polite, well-mannered. They all have their own aspirations. Daughter and son that we love dearly. A wife of 51 years. So family's probably the most thing I'm proud of. Susan and I back in 2000 had a chance to buy the family farm. It's been in the family over 100 years. So that kind of goes hand in hand with our family, and that's kind of what we've accomplished, I guess. It's not like I'm a land baron or anything else, but it's just something that means something to me that I feel good about, I guess. So.
Keeping the family farm in the family.
Yeah.
So that brings up a very interesting question, because there are a lot of Nortons in the area.
Correct.
Can you break down for me your family tree and how do all the Nortons tie in one way or another in this area, or are there different tribes of Nortons that aren't blood related?
There are some tribes, especially up around the Loudon area. That would be a cousin to Dad. So I'll back up when...
but in Wilton, the Nortons that you kind of know...
They're pretty much all related.
So how so, sideways, up and down?
Okay, so Griff's dad and my dad were brothers.
Okay, I didn't know that. So
Okay.
Griff Norton's dad, and so Griff Norton is your...
Cousin.
Yeah, okay.
Bill Norton's dad and my dad were brothers. Okay, so anybody in Bill's family, Bill, Leela Mae, Becky, Tom, they're all cousins. So in Griff's case, it was Dean, Willard, Ruth Ann, Griff, Judy, Grace, they're all cousins. Then you get over, I've got an aunt that lives over in Illinois that we're going over to see later today. I told you I had something I had going on later today. So we're going to go over and see her. That's a sister that lives, she and Dad are the only two out of the 5 kids left.
Okay.
Okay, so Jim Norton is another cousin.
Wait a minute, your dad's still around?
My dad's 92. He's still living.
And your dad's name?
It's George Melbourne. He's always been known as Mel.
Mel Norton. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. See, that's something I should know, but I don't. And isn't that funny in a small town where it's like assumed that everybody knows all this, but yet there's so much noise, you don't really stop and think about it. So
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, you can go back to Jay Brumeyer and your dad, and if you don't kind of pick up on that, or if you haven't been around for a while, you don't always know the relationship there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were 5 of them. Jim, Willie, Core is Griff's dad, Margie, and my dad. So Jane Garrett is a sister. I don't know if you know Jane or not.
Yes, I do, kind of.
So, and then my sister Pam moved back. She'd been in Colorado for over 25 years. She moved back. She's up in a place north of Tipton, up near Stanwood.
Okay.
So she just came back, which is kind of nice having her back now that Mom just passed away in November, and Dad's 92, so it's good to have her back around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, okay, to wrap that up, if you had to just off the top of your head, in and around Wilton, how many Norton relatives do you think you have? If you just had to...
There's several. If
like a couple dozen?
At least, yeah. Because if you included the Muscatine area, then you've got Lee and Dan Sheff and their family. Leela Mae was a cousin. That was Willie's daughter. So we're all tied in. So you know how that works. You can't always pick your relatives. So sometimes you say, are you related to Willard Norton or whatever? Depends on who's asking, right?
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 71.
Damn, you look good for 71.
Well, thank you.
Jeez.
So.
That's wild to me. I hope I look, and I'm not just saying that because you're sitting across from me. Yeah. You look damn good for 71.
Thank you.
Okay, so as a 71-year-old man sitting here, was it still tough to lose your mom in November?
Sure. It's always tough to, obviously being together for 71 years.
Yeah.
But I tell you what's tougher yet, Joe, is watching your parents get older.
Yeah.
And I could see Mom, even a couple of years ago where things were getting tougher for her. She was losing strength. She couldn't do the things she wanted to do. I'd watch her. We always had to have a cup of tea when you go to Mom's. And I'd watch her with the tea kettle, and it was all she could do to lift the tea kettle. And that's just wasn't Mom, and she had a lot of back pain. So when it came down to Mom last November, where the decline had finally culminated, and it was, I guess that's what you look at as far as the lesser of two, right? I didn't want to see Mom have to fight it anymore.
Yeah.
So, and I know where she is. So.
Yeah. She was a woman of faith.
Yes. We went to Sunday school together. She sat beside me in Sunday school. So I miss having her in class, but yeah.
Your dad's holding up okay?
Dad's doing remarkably well. They were married 71 years.
Wow.
71 years. In fact, last week would have been 72 years if they would have made it till January. So he's doing really well considering.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's got to be some kind of record around Wilton, isn't it? Do you know anybody that has a higher record than that?
I think Kenny and Mary Grinder were married for 74, I believe.
You know what? I think you're right. I don't know. I think Fred and I talked about that. So they might have the Wilton world record for longest marriage.
So Henry tells a story about that, And maybe this isn't the place to share it. I don't know. But Mary said we were married for 74 years. And Henry said, well, I thought you got parole after 40. Henry.
Yeah, you know what? Henry is such a good character. And Henry is wonderful because he adds a lot of levity to situations.
Yes.
Heavy situations that, I've always kind of admired Henry for his ability to take a situation that could otherwise be very somber and like, a real downer, right? Funerals suck. And Henry is a master at finding that little opening to give everybody a chuckle when they need it.
It was kind of meant to be, Joe, when Mom passed away. Tony was busy with 2 or 3 other funerals. So Henry filled in when we met over there at the funeral home. And the funny thing was, Dad had worked for Henry for 16 years. So it was just like old home week, they got to start sharing stories. So it came down. It was, getting back to what you said, if you have to go through a rough time, at least it was done well by Henry.
Yeah.
So,
and speaking of that, you've spoke at more than one funeral.
Yes, I have.
How many funerals or visitations have you spoke at?
There's 2 full funerals that come to mind. You're right. I've spoken at others. I even had a guy from work call me, and his father-in-law had passed away, and he's a Wapello resident, and they're not church people. And he said, Mike, we're not doing a service, but he said, we need some words. And Bill and I have worked together for years, and I'd do anything for him. And I went down and didn't know much about the guy, other than the guy was, he loved his cars and loved to work. He was kind of in the body shop business. So I picked out a scripture that I thought was appropriate and went down there and met with the family afterwards. We went out to the house to eat, and we spent a couple hours just sharing memories. So yeah, I've probably participated in 4 or 5 funerals. So Clarice Glennie was one that I enjoyed. Clarice a lot, and it was really weird.
Another Wilton character. What a peach. Yeah. What an amazing soul. Yeah. But anyway,
Clarice, when she was probably still in her 90s, she told, one day we were at a visitation for her sister-in-law, and she said, I want you to do my funeral. And I didn't really have that much connection with Clarice other than when she used to go out to the Dollar General. I always called her the manager of the Wilton Walmart. And she always liked that. So it got to, when she told me that, I went over to Bob and I said, Bob, are we sure about this? And Bob said, that's what Mom wants. So I got to where I'd go up and visit Clarice once in a while, and stories after stories. She had stories on the boys and on her husband, and just like you say, just a character. Never a dull moment with Clarice. And so that was a funeral that I enjoyed, and I think the family. I mean, as much as you should enjoy a funeral.
Certainly,
she'd lived a good long life, and everybody knew it, and kind of went out on her terms. So it was. That was one that was pretty special. So
I would almost argue it's more of an honor to be asked to speak at somebody's funeral than it is to wed them, even though that was a big honor to do that wedding. But, man, even to be asked one time, that's huge. You've been asked multiple times.
To sum up somebody's life and make it meaningful.
Yeah.
That's kind of important.
I mean, really, when you think about it, it's like, hey, we as a family have to think of somebody we want to go stand up in front of all the friends and family and sum up that person's life, to what you said. That's an enormous ask, but it's such an honor, right, to be asked to do something like that.
It is. That's why I questioned Bob. I said, are we sure about this? And that's what Mom wants. So, yeah.
Well, you say that because you're a very humble guy and you want to make sure you do right by the family, but I can't think of a better guy to be up talking at a funeral.
Yeah. So I did Jim Cress's. I sat down with Jackie and we picked out some scripture. Jeff Kaufman also did part of it. It's pretty hard when you're going against a politician at a service.
Yeah, so, he's got a lot of tools in his tool belt.
He's got a lot of stories, and he speaks well. But I thought that service meant something too. So, yeah, it's getting back to the weddings. I think I've done 6 weddings.
Whoa, really?
My ratio is kind of like the national average. 50% of them have failed. So, so that's not a good mark, but. The ones that are still going are special. And some of them, I even went through a counseling session with a couple of them where you actually go through a 10-step thing where you talk about your relationship with your spouse and different activities, how you manage money, how you do this and that. Did a counseling session. The one couple I really took a lot of time with and tried to stress it. Are you sure what you want to get into? And it didn't pan out, but I guess they don't know until they get into it what happens. Yeah. So.
You could sense something.
And knowing the people involved, that it may be a stretch.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you and Susan have different personalities? Would you say you're more, as an individual, are you more alike, or do you have more differences?
Probably more alike. She's always pretty good-natured. She gets up in the morning, she's smiling. She won't admit it, but she's stubborn, and so am I. So and that's where you give each other space if we get too stubborn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we're probably more alike. So
a misunderstanding between two stubborn people can get heated in a hurry.
Oh, yeah, if you don't watch out, it could, yeah.
Yeah, and you can either choose to just ram horns, or you can just, we're going to go to different pastures for a minute and just cool off and eat some grass, and then we'll come back and be happy rams again.
Yeah, we'll get over it. So,
do you have a bucket list? Like, do you have some things that you're just like, man, selfishly, I would really love to go do or go accomplish this or go experience that or own this? Like, do you have some selfish things that you'd like to just kind of do?
Not really a list. Obviously, you'd like to see I'd like to be around long enough to see the kids into their marriages or whatever their relationships, and the grandkids, see how that goes. But we're not promised tomorrow, so live each day as you can. There are things we still enjoy doing. We like taking in a baseball game now and then. I like to watch Major League Baseball, not so much in the NFL. But,
who's your team? Do you have a team, or do you just like the sport?
The Atlanta Braves. We've watched the Braves. That's an interesting story. When we first got married, we lived down south of town. We rented an old farmhouse. And Ray Arp lived down the road. And Ray's a character. Well, Ray's stepson, well, his stepdaughter's husband, I'll back up, so it'd be his son-in-law, worked for the Atlanta Braves. So when they came, like, to St. Louis or Milwaukee or whatever, Dave would be there, and we got to meet some interesting people. Skip Carey, Don Sutton, some of the announcers and stuff like that. Got to go behind the scenes and stuff, so that kind of started it all.
And that's how you become a fan.
Yeah,
like, bang, you're a fan immediately.
Yeah, and it's a good organization. They've always been solid through the years, and so it's fun to watch. So now we've been to 10 different ballparks, and if I had anything on the bucket list, I'd say a few more ballparks just to take in a few more games.
Do you remember your favorite ballpark to be at? Does one stick out over the other?
There are some I really don't like at all. I don't care much for the White Sox park. To me, but Milwaukee's nice because no matter what the weather, you're going to see a ball game.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get in and out of. St. Louis, just the tradition down there. And, we've walked the streets of St. Louis and felt okay about that. I liked Atlanta's old stadium. I'm not as fond of their new stadium. They made it more of a destination spot. And, of course, that's where the marketing is and stuff. That's what they've done there. But Turner Field, to me, was more special than what they have now. So yeah, there's some. I'd like to go out to Pittsburgh, and now that we have a grandson going to school out there, go to Pittsburgh for the Three Rivers Stadium. I think that'd just be a neat setting.
That would be fun.
And,
now you got a good excuse to go to a game, too.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to try to see if Jack's schedule coordinates with something that works out there. So Erie's probably only 100 miles from Pittsburgh, so we can make that all work.
Do you still work out every day?
I don't. I kind of got away from when I started coaching. It was hard to. My day, Joe, I'd leave for work at 4:30 in the morning, get off at 3.
You'd leave at 4:30.
4:30 in the morning, go coach softball. I'll never forget one night we were in a doubleheader in Solon. We got home at midnight. I got up at 4 o'clock the next morning, 4:30, went to work, and we did it again the next night. And so it got to where doing the workout routine was tough. At that time, Rick and I were working out at his house. And it just got to be where I couldn't do it, and I couldn't be a good workout partner for him either because I didn't know what nights I could get in there and stuff. So kind of got away from it. But I can still knock out a few push-ups now and then.
Oh, I bet you can.
So,
I love the saying, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And what's interesting is, back to when we first started talking here this morning, you made me feel welcome as a 6th, 7th grader coming into this building for the first time in the land of giants where I had no idea what I was doing. But that made an impression on me. And I don't think people realize, and I certainly don't, you get caught up in the moment. You can very easily give somebody an emotion that they will hold on to for the rest of their life. A little thing, and it can be something little. Like me probably telling you that, you're like, oh, that's nice. I was just being friendly, But to me, that made a big difference in my opinion of you moving forward the rest of my life. And I got to stop and realize that too, because I think I've done it both ways. And where I've given a bad opinion, and people are going to just carry that around like a little bag on a stick, but I think I've left a few good opinions. My point is, I think you have left a mountain of good opinions and good thoughts behind you, and I don't think you even realize it.
Well, I mean, that's the purpose is to treat others like we want to be treated, right? And you're right, Joe. There were times when I was back on the assembly line or when I had a crew, I found out, I'll back up. My son just got into some management things. So he said, what's the key? I says, the management is to empower your people to make sure that they feel like it's something they can buy into. Make sure it's a group effort, not just you telling them. And I go back, I can think of several instances when I was on the assembly line or with a welder. Why don't we try this, or what do you think about this? Empower them into the schedule, empower them into what you could do. And I think it makes a difference, and I think you're right. There's a lot of times, you're right. When you were in here, you were fun when you came in here. And it was fun to see you, and you were ahead of your times. There weren't too many young kids in here lifting weights and doing stuff. But it was, at that time, it was just fun to see him and let him know you were welcome. And same thing in coaching. I get girls that write a note, you don't know how much you taught me. You don't know it at the time, but if you give them the time of day, and you only get one time to make that first impression, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, include them.
I was watching something online the other day, and I want to get your thoughts on this after I say this. So, I was watching another podcast, and there was a guest on the podcast talking about smaller communities versus large cities. And us as people, we tend to have that we've used the term already, tribe, but we tend to have the tribe mentality. And what's interesting is from a social aspect or a human to human aspect, if you're in a small town and you see somebody in distress, you are far more likely to stop and try to help versus if you were in a big city and saw that exact same person in that exact same scenario under the exact same distress. And I feel like it's gotten times a bazillion with the internet and social media where you'll see somebody in distress online, and it's even more of a disconnect. And I take that and I put that thought over here, and then I see some of these younger influencers online on all the different platforms. And one of the themes is you need to get out of your small town. You need to get out to these big cities. You need to expand yourself. You need to cut bait and carve out your own path and do your own thing. But the two seem to contradict one another because there again, we all need a buddy, right? And not everybody's got Jesus hanging out with them as much as we'd love to think, they do, but they don't know they do.
Right.
So on the topic of getting out of that small town and going and expanding your horizons, knowing that you don't have a tribe, what are some of your thoughts on that?
To me, the small community is special. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying we can't make it in a large community.
Right.
We've proven that. A lot of our kids have gone on to do great things.
And your grandkids are doing great things out there.
Right.
But just all of the things that we've talked about so far, it seems to tie into this thought.
The community, the small community, just like in town, just like you said, if your dad called and needed something, we'd be there, right? If you saw me down at the food pantry and say, Joe, I need something, you'd be down there to help me. It's just the community effort. You see the guys that work for the city. Hey, Bob, I need a little help over here. Bob shows up. Mm-hmm. That's who we are in the community. And we feel that. We're close-knit. And I think, we just reach out to each other, and we know who our go-to people are in town. We know if we need an answer to a question, who to go see. And I think it's pretty special. And I think in a small community, we have never shortchanged those that want to go on to the large community. I think we provide a good education. I think the kids, like you said, the kids you've interviewed, you already see some of the neat things they're doing, what they want to do in the future. And I don't think we've ever left them short. I think we've provided them what they need, and then they can make that choice. My son will probably never come back to Wilton. He likes Davenport. He likes that kind of that hustle a little bit. But on the other hand, my daughter, I think, is very comfortable in a small community. Obviously, Susan and I, we've never left town. So for us, the small community works well. But I like I say, I think it's special to be in a small community.
I do too. And to that same thought of someone in distress in a big city, right? Isn't it wild that we still take that person in distress in a big city that you would otherwise probably like, well, someone else will probably get, I'm in a hurry, whatever.
Right.
But if that person had a Wilton Beaver t-shirt on, I mean,
Would stop.
you would pull over immediately, right?
Muscatine County plates.
Muscatine County plates, yeah. You would absolutely, and that is the power of a small town.
Yep. It means something to us. Yeah, exactly. You know, and in town, if you got a car stop, you roll down your window, are you okay?
Yeah.
You got a ride? Probably wouldn't do that in Chicago.
Well, to that point, on Friday, on my way into town, Ovison had one of his dump trucks on the side of the road in between Wilton and Durant. He had the hood up. He had another pickup out there. So from a business owner standpoint, I drove by and went, oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
sucks. That's costing Ron a lot of money right now. And but you also know when not to stop, right? You're like,
Right.
Ron's got that. He doesn't want some wise ass comment or somebody stopping by or driving by real slow going, did she quit on you? You know, he doesn't want to hear that, right? He's having a bad day. But on the way out of town, you know, Ron was still out there at the end of the day on Friday. Tools underneath the truck.
Oh, my.
So clearly it was a situation where maybe the air brakes locked up or whatever, where he couldn't pull it into town because Ron doesn't want to work on something on the side of the road. And you just, man, I thought about Ron the whole 40 minutes home. I was like, God, that just sucks.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully he had the weather kind of on his side this time of year.
Right.
But that's the tribe mentality of like, man, I wanted to stop, but I also knew, like, growing up in this town, you just know when a good time to stop is,
right.
or when a time where Ron's got this. He's not in distress. He's just having a bad day. Yeah, it's wild though. You don't get that anywhere but a small town.
Yeah, we care about each other, and we reach out when we need to. We also have that little bit of pride where we're gonna take care of business, like you said. Ron's got his business under control. He's going to take care of it. But if Ron knew you were going to help, he'd welcome that too.
Yeah. Is there something about Mike Norton I don't know?
Probably not.
You seem like everything's at face value here.
I think I'm pretty transparent. I don't think I try to hide anything. So
No interesting skydiving naked stories or
we
anything
haven't done
like
any of
that.
No, nothing like that. My son did go skydiving. Son and Jack, for his graduation present, they went skydiving.
What did he say about it?
Said they'd do it again.
Really?
Yeah. I said, well, you're not getting Grandpa going.
Yeah. I'm still such a stick in the mud. I realize life is short.
Also.
I realize we only have a short amount of time, and it was a 400 trillion and one chance that we were even going to be born in the first place, and we should just drink out of every cup. But there's just things where I'm just like, I don't like a lot of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a stick in the mud when it comes to that kind of risk taking.
Yeah, more down to earth. Yeah.
Yeah. Financially, I'll take all the risks in the world. That's fine because I can always pick up pop cans and recover. I suppose.
Mow another lawn.
Mow another lawn. Yeah, exactly.
That's what I always tell Susan. I said, we buy that. I'll just have to mow another lawn. So,
Mike, I got to tell you, you're going to have a long line someday. You're going to have a long, long line. They're going to have to bring in Porta Johns and put them about 4 blocks down the street. So when that day comes, what do you want people saying? Or do you care?
I think everybody cares that you treat people right, and you worked hard and gave your best effort. I think that's important, that we do things to the best of our ability. I hear these people that doing, what is it they call it now? The people that go to work, but they don't really want to be there at work. Well, there's a
lot of names for that.
Well, there's a term for it now. But that just drives me nuts. Why do you even go through the motions?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it right. And that's what I think. You need to give your best effort. So
worked hard, gave his best effort, cared about people.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a meaningful eulogy.
Pretty well sums it up, I think.
Pretty well sums it up, but there's a lot to unpack there. Mike, I feel like you and I could chat for a long time, but I know you got stuff going on today. It's a big week this week, yep. And I appreciate your openness and willingness to share your thoughts with me and everybody, because I'm sure there's a few people watching the live this morning. There certainly will be people watching the playback. I'm sure I'll be able to cut this into a million reels if I have time to edit it. But thank you, and stay off social media.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's a promise I'll keep.
Yeah, you're not going to have a new Mike Norton Snapchat account pop up today?
No.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing everything that you do in Wilton. I want you to come back because we didn't get a chance to really talk about the food pantry and some of the other things that you do. So I feel like that could be a good conversation.
There are some good things that happen in Wilton. A lady at our church is really active in the clothes closet. And Susan does social media. She said one gal got on social media the night. She says, "We have a clothes closet." Didn't even know it.
The one right by the old REC building out there.
REC building. And Marianne Maurer does a fantastic job out there. You can buy slightly used clothes for $25, and the service she provides, I mean, it's just remarkable. And not just Marianne. There are other churches involved, but Marianne kind of organizes it. And
everything's donated. The work is donated.
Right.
It's all just out of the goodness of our own hearts, right?
It's our community.
Their hearts, yeah.
Our community. So, food pantry is the same way. We don't really judge anybody. If you have a need, you lost your job, times are tough, whatever, sign your paper and we'll go.
You know what? We have time. We're not on a time crunch here. We're not on a network. I do want to talk about the food pantry. Do you have another couple minutes here?
Sure.
Before you got to talk or before you got to jet? The food pantry is one of those things that I think is very special in this community. It's underfunded and probably understaffed and needs a lot of help. But can you talk a little bit about the food pantry, how long you've been involved, and how vital it is to the community and the people within it?
So it's been about 2.5 years ago. Susan was approached. The person that was ordering the food had health issues. So I wanted to know if Susan would take that role. And it's, one of those talks you talked about, people being married 50 years, you kind of know what each other's thinking. So Susan came home and she said, "Well, I've been asked to do this. What do you think?" And I said, "We're retired. This is something we should do. We should give back." So we didn't realize what we were getting into because it takes a lot of time. So the majority of our food comes from Riverbend up in the Quad Cities.
And what is Riverbend?
Riverbend is a huge warehouse where they get all these canned goods, bread items, that type stuff. And they disperse to the other places.
So it's a giant food bank hub.
Yes.
That then goes out to the smaller food pantries. Okay.
So when you see these kids in high school up there when they do their food donations, a lot of that will go into the Riverbend warehouse. So we get the majority of our food comes out of there, and the Pioneer, or previously Pioneer, it's Cortiva now. They're good enough. They bring that food out for us. They go up and pick it up, and it's usually the first and third Monday of the month. Now this, because today's a holiday, we had to do it Friday last week. They bring the food out. So we stock the shelves on Monday, and then the food's passed back out on Tuesday. So in the last couple of months, we've been servicing probably 50 to 55 families in a day. And they're welcome,
wow.
And they're welcome to come back both times in the month. They can come back. Sometimes there's a 3-week gap in there just because of the way the days fall. But usually it's about every 2 weeks. So what we can't get from Riverbend, Susan makes a grocery list, and we go to Aldi's and Walmart and whatever to pick it up. So we go down and pick that up in the meantime and stock the shelves so we have everything lined up. It's interesting. You find out that Farm and Fleet and Menards are the cheapest on Charmin tissue, and you find
these little
things. Laundry detergent you buy at Farm and Fleet. It's funny, but Susan's quite a shopper. So
I suppose you're right. I suppose you know where every screaming deal is for household things.
She'll watch for any bargains she can get. And so we stock the shelves, like I say, on Monday, Tuesday we're open from 9 to 11. even though you close at 11, a lot of times you're restocking till 11:30 or so. We have good volunteers down there. We have a real good team right now, but we're all getting older. So Susan and I are probably the youngest of the group. So so we need other people and I'll be honest, when you're retired, it makes it easier because you don't have to go to work on Tuesday, or you can be there Monday morning.
Sure.
So that's part of it. But yeah, we've got a good crew down there.
Tell me about the people who rely on the food bank and any misconceptions there may be.
So there are the people that rely. We have some that are regulars, mostly older people on fixed incomes. And you see them, like I say, just about every time we're open. And then you'll also see an influx of new people, like I say, guy ran out and didn't have a job. Sometimes they're new in the community, just trying to get established. And our rules, or our guidelines, I should say, are people that are in the Wilton or Durant School District. We had a couple come in a month ago that were from Muscatine. And they were quite open about it. Said, we just got to Muscatine, lost my job, don't have a place to go, pretty much living out of their car. So we always make sure that they get what they need that time. And then we suggest, like in Muscatine, you can go down to MCSA or one of the other food banks down there. So we try to guide them in a direction that would help them for future use. And it's interesting what you come across. Some younger moms, raising kids on their own and trying to raise a family and have needs. And basically all they do is fill out a paper and say what their income guidelines are and this and that. And Irene Peterson does a good job of that, making sure and we don't question whatever they put down, that's up to them. And so that's what we try to do. We try to provide them with what they need. We've been blessed in this community, a lot of good donors, and we've been able to provide a lot of food. So we have what we call, every once in a while we get the government loads. Last Friday was a government load. So we've got like 9 flats of green beans that come in. Well, we're not going to disperse all of them in one day. So we put together what we call a free box. So anything that was government, not things that we paid for, but things that were government issue that we have a lot of, we'll put together a box and we give that to the people. They don't have to use their point system for that. And I should explain that a little bit. The point system is if you come in as an individual, you get 10 points. So 10 points, you can get 8 cans of vegetables for 1 point. You can get a gallon of milk for 1 point. So you accumulate your points, you get 10 points total. Well, the free box doesn't count against any of your points. So you could get as many as 6 or 8 cans of food, a bag of rice, and a bag of pinto beans that don't count against your points.
Oh, that's great.
So they go out of there with a lot of groceries.
I've often wondered how you keep people from possibly overloading on stuff. So you walk in, you got 10 points, use it however you want.
Yeah. Now, if you're a family person, if your family's, I think it's 4 or more, then you get 15 points. And then if we do have a spell where it's going to be a 3-week gap, a lot of times we'll give extra points just to make sure they can carry over. So, yeah, there has to be some kind of guideline. You're right, Joe. Or, how some people kind of use the system. They would be emptying the shelves if they could.
Yeah.
And I would say the majority of the people have real needs, and it's like anything else. There's probably always a couple that stretch it, but I'd say that most of them that it's a real need.
Isn't it interesting how the two conversations tie into one another? Before I started interviewing the high school seniors, I had a misconception of who they are as a group. Mm-hmm. And once you start to get to know them individually, you're like, these are good people. These are hardworking kids. They've got goals. They've got aspirations. They're just trying to get through life the best the way they know how.
Right.
Same thing at the food pantry. You'll see a lineup outside, and some people will drive by and not think anything. Some people will drive by and think, man, that sucks. I feel for them. And some people will drive by and say, get a job, you bum.
Yeah.
And because you're not in that world. What are your thoughts on that?
And I'm going to be honest on that. There are times where I see a couple drive in, and the gal may come in and get groceries, and husband's waiting out in the car. To me, he looks physically able.
Leaned back in the passenger seat.
And Joe, you know, I'm all about work.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful how you judge, because you don't know their situation. Maybe he's physically incapable of working, but you always wonder, you know, isn't there something you could be doing?
Yeah.
And so that thought does come to mind. But yeah, we're going to provide him with the food and go on with it. But like I say, probably the majority, especially the older people.
Yeah.
You know, the cost of living goes up faster than what their Social Security does, whatever. They need the help. And good people, a lot of them are going through health issues. They're always willing to share that when they're down there. You know, I went in for this and went in for that. And, it's, you know, it kind of comes back to we help others, and if there's fraud or whatever involved, that's up to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll never forget, years ago, a couple came to church, needed a place to stay. And my mom and dad were always the kind that helped. So they had him spend the night at our place, you know, had supper, the whole works. Next day, Dad went out, and half his tools were missing. I said, well, Dad, you did the right thing. They're the ones that didn't.
Yeah.
So they got to live with that, not Dad. And so that's where you're at. You know, you can't – we do the right thing. You give $20 at somebody down hard on their luck. If they don't use it wisely, that's on them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've really tried to subscribe to over the last 10 years has been, if you do something for somebody, expect nothing in return. Yeah. Not a thank you, not a nod, not a wave, nothing. Because if you do, well, you're not really doing it for them.
Right.
You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the views on social media. You're doing it for the feeling of the thanks that you get in return. So, in other words, there was an expectation.
Right.
And so the food pantry, I think, is a wonderful place to just do for people and just move on, because we're just doing it because we want to do it. And whatever they choose to do, like you said, is on them.
It's on them, yeah.
And it's a way to get a lot of weight off your shoulders, too. So you don't harbor a lot of ill will, because you're right. Yeah, you'll see some people that you're like, dang, man, I don't know, do they really need it, or they just want it?
Right.
And you got to just let it go. Yeah. And I think you do a really good job of going through life letting things go and don't drag things along with you.
Yeah, you know, we can always question, did that person really need that tattoo, or could they put it to a different reason, right?
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can look at that and say, man, they spent a lot of money on ink. You know, they probably could have done something else with that.
Yeah.
But, like I say, we don't know their situation. We don't know how that was. But
yeah. Mike, you're a gem. You are a true Wilton treasure. You're a gem.
Thank you.
And I hope you live to be 171. I really do.
Yeah, we don't want to go that far.
Yeah.
The whole body will wear out before then. So
thank you for spending so much time with me this morning.
It was fun.
And thanks for spending time with the town, right? I think we had some people. Do we have some people watching, Casey? Well, good morning. Who's ever watching and who's ever going to watch the replay? Yeah. Mike Norton, he's a champ. So thank you, Mike. Don't change a thing. You got the recipe just right.
Too old to change.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.